Can you imagine the horror of witnessing a beautiful mother covered in blood under her beloved cub's cap, clutching your hand and whispering her dying words? "Find my babies. Love them for me. Promise me." That was the fateful moment that tore apart Emily Harper's life. A poor girl wandering the cold, windy streets of Chicago, all because of a bloody car crash targeted at Mafia boss Vincent Russo. His wife lost her life, his children fell silent from trauma, and Emily. She lost her legs, lost her unborn child, and sank deep into the hell of poverty, where hunger and cold gnawed at her every night. 3 years later, fate pushed them together again. A frail girl in a wheelchair stepping into the luxurious world full of guns and shadows of a powerful man. Can love sprout from the ashes of tragedy, or will it burn everything to the ground? Stay with me, because this story will send chills down your spine, with shocking twists where grace and sin intertwine, and one promise can change an entire destiny. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. Alright, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. In the sprawling suburbs north of Chicago, in an ultra-secure mansion, tucked away among the manicured estates of Winnetka, Illinois, Vincent "Vinny" Russo lived a life, shrouded in shadows and silence. The house itself was a fortress of wealth, marble floors that gleamed under crystal chandeliers, walls lined with priceless art collected from galleries in New York and Europe, a home theater larger than most apartments, and a garage filled with gleaming luxury cars that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Outside, the manicured lawns stretched toward Lake Michigan, where private docks held boats ready for summer escapes. Security cameras, dozens of them, watched every corner, every hallway, every gate, because in Vincent's world, trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. 3 years had passed since that awful night in October of the year 2022, but the pain felt as fresh as yesterday. A rival crew from the old South Side families had botched an attempt on Vincent's life, leaking his route along Interstate 94. The multi-car pileup that followed claimed the life of his beloved wife, Maria Russo, leaving their 4-year-old twins, Luca and Sophia, deeply traumatized nightmares that woke them screaming words they could no longer speak, eyes that stared blankly at the world, as if their joy had died with their mother. The younger twins, Nico and Matteo, born prematurely just weeks before the crash and now nearing 3 years old, had been safe at home with a nanny that night. But they grew up in a home heavy with unspoken sorrow, their toddling steps echoing through rooms that once rang with laughter. Vincent, a fair-skinned Italian-American man in his early 40s, had built his empire the way his father and grandfather had, through construction contracts, nightlife venues, and the quiet enforcement that kept Chicago's underworld in balance. He was powerful, respected, feared. Men nodded when he entered a room. Deals were sealed with a handshake because no one dared cross him. Yet inside, gnawing guilt consumed him like acid. Every night as he sat alone in his vast office overlooking the lake, remorse tore at his soul. His lifestyle, the risks, the enemies had indirectly caused Maria's death. The hit had been meant for him. She had taken a wrong turn that evening, rushing home from a family errand. If not for his world, she would still be alive, singing her special lullaby version of "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" to the children, baking apple pies for 4th of July barbecues, wearing her favorite Chicago Cubs cap on game days. The guilt was a violent storm inside him, conflicting with the iron control he projected to the world. He had avenged her in ways the police never traced. Quiet meetings in abandoned warehouses, tense standoffs on dark Chicago streets, where rival crews backed down under his cold stare, but nothing eased the remorse. His children suffered because of him. Luca and Sophia barely spoke anymore. Nico and Matteo cried for a mother's touch they could only remember in fragments. Previous nannies and aides had come and gone, some leaked stories to tabloids for quick cash, others stole small items or vanished without notice. Trust had died with Maria. From Emily Harper's perspective, life in the crumbling apartments of Englewood on Chicago's South Side was a daily battle against despair. At 28, she was destitute, impoverished beyond what most could imagine, thin from months of skipping meals to stretch her meager waitress tips, malnourished with dark circles under her eyes from sleep-deprived nights on a lumpy mattress, in a drafty studio where wind howled through cracked windows. Winters were brutal. She had endured too many cold nights huddled under threadbare blankets scavenged from charity bins, her breath visible in the unheated room. Eviction notices piled up like fallen leaves. Utilities shut off more often than not. She walked miles to her shifts at a rundown diner because bus fare was a luxury her shoes worn through at the soles. That night, 3 years ago, haunted her still. Driving home late from a double shift, exhausted and pregnant with a child she could barely afford, her old pickup truck had been caught in the chaos of the pileup. Flames licked at a mangled SUV. Screams pierced the air. Without thinking, Emily had crawled from her wreckage, ignoring the searing pain in her spine, and dragged 2 small children, Luca and Sophia, from the burning vehicle, just as emergency lights flashed in the distance. The Mother Maria Beautiful, even in tragedy, had grasped Emily's hand with fading strength, blood staining her Chicago Cubs cap. "Find my babies, all 4 of them," she had whispered, tears in her eyes. "Love them for me. Promise." Emily had nodded, sobbing as Maria slipped away. The trauma of that night stole everything from Emily. The crash paralyzed her from the waist down. Months in rehab followed, paid for by charity funds that barely covered the basics. Worse, the shock triggered early labor in the hospital emergency room. Her unborn daughter lived only minutes. Grief, compounded grief. Wheelchair-bound, now jobs were scarce. Poverty deepened into humiliation, begging for extensions on rent, accepting food pantry handouts, feeling the sting of pitying glances from strangers. Nights brought dizziness, numbness in her heart, waves of disorientation, where the world spun and pain, physical and emotional, threatened to swallow her whole. Yet resilience burned quietly within her. She had trained as a pediatric home health aide, specializing in trauma care, scraping by on disability checks and part-time work. For years, anonymously, she left care packages at the gates of a certain Winnetka mansion, toys for the older twins' books, and White Sox onesies for the toddlers' notes of encouragement she never signed. Guilt drove her. Maria's promise bound her. She watched from afar as Vincent's world of wealth contrasted her own pitiful existence, wondering if grace could ever bridge such a chasm. One rainy afternoon in October of the year 2025, Emily's phone rang an offer for a live-in aide position caring for 4 young children in a North Shore home. Her heart pounded with fear, curiosity, confusion. Could this be fate? Trembling, she accepted, wheeling her few belongings into a battered taxi toward Winnetka. As the city skyline faded and grand estates appeared, a surge of anxiety gripped her. Soft-voiced, timid, polite in her thoughts. How could someone like her enter a world like his? Vincent, reviewing the application in his office, felt an unexplained pull. The background check was clean. References glowed. But something in her photo, tired eyes, quiet strength, stirred a flicker deep within him. Suspicion warred with an overwhelming, unreasonable surge, a protective instinct, almost love at first sight, though he pushed it down. His heart, scarred by loss, conflicted violently. Guilt whispered he didn't deserve happiness. Remorse screamed he must protect his children at any cost. As Emily's taxi pulled through the fortified gates past armed guards who nodded curtly, she felt horror and intense curiosity mingle, dizzy, numb, her balance lost in this sudden shift from desperate poverty to opulent power. Vincent watched on a monitor, his breath catching. For the first time in years, something beyond guilt stirred an intense, passionate pull toward this stranger, who might just be the grace his shattered family needed. Little did either know how fiercely their worlds would collide. The taxi rolled to a stop in front of the towering wrought iron gates of the Russo estate, on a crisp October afternoon in the year 2025. Emily Harper sat in the back seat, her thin fingers clutching the handles of her old wheelchair folded beside her. The driver, a kind older man who had taken pity on her trembling voice when she called for the ride, glanced back with concern. She paid him with the last crumpled bills from her worn purse money scraped together from skipped meals and overtime shifts that barely existed anymore. As the gates swung open with a mechanical hum revealing a long tree-lined driveway that seemed to stretch into another world, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The air felt thicker here, scented with freshly cut grass and lake breeze instead of the exhaust and despair of Englewood. Emily's heart pounded so fiercely she feared it might burst. Confusion clouded her thoughts. Why had they chosen her? Her application had been one among hundreds, she was sure. A wheelchair-bound aide with no fancy credentials, living on food stamps and charity medical visits. Yet the email had come, an offer of live-in employment, room and board, included caring for 4 young children in need of specialized trauma support. The salary mentioned was more than she had earned in the past 2 years combined. It felt like a dream, or perhaps a cruel trick. Fear coiled in her stomach, cold and sharp. What if they discovered how broken she truly was? How poor, how pitiful. The taxi pulled away, leaving her alone on the gravel. Guards in dark suits watched from a small gatehouse, their expressions unreadable. One approached, polite but distant, and lifted her suitcase, a single, battered duffel. containing everything she owned. A few threadbare sweaters, 2 pairs of jeans patched at the knees, a small Bible with pages soft from desperate midnight, readings, and the faded photograph she kept hidden beneath her. Clothes. The photograph of that night 3 years ago, stained with dried blood, showing Maria Russo's Chicago Cubs cap cradled in her shaking hands. Emily wheeled herself forward, the chair's wheels crunching against the pristine driveway. Her arms ached from the effort. Malnutrition had stolen much of her strength. She was thin to the point of fragility, cheekbones sharp beneath pale skin, eyes ringed with permanent shadows from countless sleepless nights. Listening to wind howl through cracked windows and worrying about the next eviction notice, hunger was a constant companion, a gnawing emptiness that made the world tilt at the edges. Yet she kept her posture straight, her voice soft and timid when the guard asked her name. "Emily Harper, sir. I'm expected." Inside the mansion, Vincent Russo stood before a bank of security monitors in his private office, watching the grainy feet of the driveway. His breath caught the moment the taxi door opened, and she emerged. Small, fragile, yet moving with a quiet determination that pierced straight through his guarded heart. Suspicion flared first, as it always did. Another aide, another potential threat. His enemies had tried everything, bribes, leaks, even planting people close to his children. But something about her stilled the usual cold calculation. Those tired eyes, the way her hands trembled on the wheels, the thinness of her coat against the autumn chill, it stirred an ache he had not felt since Maria. Guilt surged alongside it, violent and consuming. How dare he notice another woman's quiet beauty when Maria lay buried because of his world? Remorse tore at him like claws. Yet beneath the torment an overwhelming surge rose, passionate, burning, almost frightening in its intensity. From the very first glimpse, love ignited in him, fierce and unreasonable. He wanted to shield her from every hardship those shadows under her eyes whispered of. He wanted to erase the pain etched into her delicate features. The conflict raged inside him, a powerful man accustomed to control, suddenly powerless against this sudden, consuming tenderness. He forced himself to remain in the office, as the housekeeper led Emily through the grand foyer. Marble columns rose 2 stories high. A chandelier of glittering crystal scattered light across polished hardwood floors. Fresh flowers, roses, and lilies flown in from California filled vases on antique tables. The air smelled of lemon polish and wealth. Emily's breath grew shallow. Shock numbed her limbs. The opulence felt like a slap after years of scraping mold from her tiny apartment walls, of bathing in cold water when the gas was cut off, of waking to find rats had chewed through her last box of cereal. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back. She could not afford weakness here. The housekeeper, a kind woman named Rosa, guided her to the children's wing on the first floor, an entire suite designed for comfort and safety. Soft carpets muffled the wheels of Emily's chair. Oversized windows overlooked manicured gardens and beyond the distant shimmer of Lake Michigan. 4 bedrooms branched off a central playroom, filled with toys Emily had only seen in store windows. Wooden trains handcrafted in Vermont, shelves of picture books, a miniature kitchen set, complete with pretend appliances. Her heart twisted. These children had everything yet. From the brief files she had been sent, they had lost more than she could imagine. Rosa left her to settle in a spacious guest room adjacent to the nursery, her room now apparently. A real bed with fresh linens, a private bathroom with heated floors, a closet larger than her old studio apartment. Emily sat motionless for a long moment, hands clenched in her lap. Disorientation swept over her in waves. This could not be real. Any moment she would wake on her lumpy mattress, shivering under a single blanket, the wind rattling loose panes. Anxiety tightened her throat. What did they expect of her? How could someone as powerless as she care for the children of a man like Vincent Russo? Downstairs, Vincent could watch no longer. He descended the curved staircase. Each step measured his expensive Italian loafers, silent on the runner. When he entered the children's wing, Emily was arranging her few belongings on the dresser, with careful, almost reverent movements. She turned at the sound of his approach, and their eyes met for the first time. Vincent stopped in the doorway, struck again by that fierce, burning surge. She was even more fragile up close, malnourished, yes, but with a quiet beauty that made his chest ache. Her dark hair was pulled into a simple ponytail. Her sweater hung loose on narrow shoulders. Yet her gaze, though timid and guarded, held steady. Polite, soft voice, ready with a sir. "Miss Harper," he said, his deep voice gentler than he intended. "Welcome." Emily's heart stuttered. Vincent Russo was taller than photographs suggested, broad-shouldered in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her annual income had ever been. Fair-skinned, dark-haired, with eyes that carried storms. Power radiated from him, yet sorrow shadowed his features. She felt small, exposed the disparity between them, a chasm. Her voice emerged barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Mr. Russo. I'll do my very best for your children." The politeness in her tone, the timid dip of her head, it tore at him. Guilt and remorse crashed harder. This woman had suffered because of his enemies, had lost everything, saving his older twins, and now stood before him in threadbare clothes, accepting charity from the very world that had broken her. The love that had sparked on the monitor now blazed passionate and overwhelming. He wanted to gather her close, promise her the safety and warmth she had clearly been denied for years, but suspicion lingered, warring with tenderness. Violent inner conflict twisted inside him. Before he could speak again, his phone buzzed an urgent message from his lieutenant. Rival crew spotted near the south gate. Vincent's jaw tightened. He excused himself with a curt nod, leaving Emily staring after him, confusion and fear mingling anew. Later that evening, as Emily prepared bottles for the younger twins in the state-of-the-art kitchen marble countertops, Sub-Zero appliances gleaming, she heard raised voices outside. Peering through a window, she saw Vincent in the driveway, confronting 3 men in a black SUV that had pulled up boldly. Tension crackled in the air. The men gestured aggressively. Words lost to distance, but Vincent's posture was steel, unyielding, commanding. One rival stepped too close. Vincent's hand shot out, gripping the man's collar, voice low and lethal. The confrontation ended abruptly, the SUV peeling away with a screech of tires. Vincent stood alone under the security lights, chest heaving, remorse flickering across his face, as he glanced toward the house, toward the wing, where his children and now Emily waited. Emily pulled back from the window, heart racing. Horror and curiosity warred within her. This was his world, dangerous, powerful, utterly foreign. Yet in that moment, watching him protect his home, a strange warmth flickered despite her fear. She pressed a thin hand to her chest, dizzy again, the numbness spreading. How could a man like him need someone like her? And how could she survive the intensity of the feelings already stirring in the silent spaces between them? The first few days in the Russo mansion blurred into a haze for Emily Harper each. A moment, a stark reminder of the chasm between her past and this bewildering present. October in the year 2025 brought crisp winds off Lake Michigan that whispered through the estate's manicured grounds. But inside the opulent walls, warmth enveloped everything radiant. Floor heating in every room, fireplaces crackling with gas logs that cost more to run in a week than Emily had spent on utilities in a year. She wheeled through the children's wing with careful precision, her thin arms straining against the effort, body still weakened by years of malnourishment, and the toll of sleeping rough on cold wind-swept nights when her landlord locked her out for late rent. The children were her anchor, in the storm of emotions. Luca and Sophia, the 4-year-old twins, watched her warily from their wheelchairs in the playroom, eyes wide with the trauma that mirrored her own hidden scars. Nico and Matteo, the energetic toddlers nearing 3, toddled about with boundless energy, their laughter a rare spark in the heavy air. Emily approached them softly, her voice timid and polite as she knelt as best she could from her chair. "Hello, little ones," she murmured to Luca and Sophia. "I'm Emily. I'm here to help you feel safe." The older twins said nothing at first, but she persisted, pulling out a worn storybook from her duffel, one of the few possessions she had carried from her old life. It was a tattered copy of a baseball adventure, pages dog-eared from countless readings in her drafty apartment. As evening fell on the 3rd day, Emily felt the exhaustion creep in deeper. She had skipped lunch again, her stomach a hollow ache, too proud to ask for the lavish meals prepared in the mansion's gourmet kitchen. Sleep had eluded her the night before. Memories of cold winds rattling her, Englewood windows haunted her dreams, leaving her more sleep-deprived than ever. Thin and fragile, she pushed through changing diapers for the toddlers, reading softly to the older ones until their eyelids drooped. The disparity gnawed at her here. Toys overflowed from custom-built shelves, clothes hung in closets bigger than her old room, while she had once rationed a single bar of soap for weeks. Vincent observed it all from his office. Monitors the bank of screens, a testament to his wealth and paranoia. High-definition feeds captured every angle, funded by the empire he had built through sheer will and shadowed dealings. He paced the room, his fair-skinned face taut with inner turmoil. Suspicion lingered like smoke. Why her? Why did she move with such quiet grace despite her obvious hardships? Yet the love that had ignited upon her arrival burned brighter each hour, passionate and intense, tearing at his resolve. He wanted to storm into the nursery, wrap her in his arms, erase the hunger lines on her face. But remorse surged violently. Maria's memory screamed betrayal. How could he feel this for another when his choices had cost his wife everything? The conflict was a storm inside him, gnawing guilt, clashing with burning desire, leaving him raw. That night, as thunder rumbled over the lake, the children stirred. First, Nico and Matteo fussed in their cribs, tiny fists waving in distress. Emily wheeled into the nursery, soothing them with gentle rocks and whispers. But soon Luca and Sophia woke screaming from nightmares, high-pitched cries that echoed through the halls. Emily hurried to their room, her heart pounding with anxiety. The twins thrashed in their beds, faces pale with terror. "It's okay, sweethearts," she said softly, timidly reaching out. "I'm here." Desperate to calm them, she began humming a melody she had heard Maria murmur in those final moments. A gentle, personalized version of "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," with words twisted into a lullaby about home runs and family cheers. The song flowed from her, instinctively soft and polite in its tenderness. The children quieted almost immediately. Luca's eyes widened in recognition. Sophia clutched her blanket breath, steadying. Emily's own tears fell silently, confusion and shock mingling with deep disorientation. How could this simple tune hold such power? Dizziness swept over her. She gripped the bed rail for balance, numbness spreading through her limbs. The moment felt sacred yet absurdly unfair. Her poverty had taught her survival songs for lonely nights, but this one belonged to a dead woman's love. In his office, Vincent froze at the monitor. The lullaby, Maria's private lullaby, known only to him and the children, pierced his heart like a blade. Suspicion exploded into shock. How did she know it? His hands trembled. He rewound the footage, playing it again and again. The burning love intensified, passionate waves crashing against violent doubt. She was connected somehow. Remorse tore deeper if she was here because of that night, because of his enemies, than his world had dragged her into this. Guilt consumed him, conflicting with the overwhelming urge to confront her, to protect her from whatever secrets she carried. Unable to stay away, Vincent slipped quietly into Emily's room while she was occupied with the children. The space was sparse despite the mansion's luxury. Her few items laid out neatly: the duffel, a small Bible, and there, face down on the nightstand, a faded photograph. His fingers shook as he lifted it. The image showed Emily at the crash scene 3 years ago, bloodied and determined, cradling Maria's Chicago Cubs cap amid flashing emergency lights. The back bore a handwritten note in careful script: October 17th, the year 2022. Interstate 94. Maria's last words: "Find my babies, all 4. Promise." Vincent's world tilted. He sank onto the edge of her bed, the photograph burning in his hand. Shock numbed him. Confusion and horror swirled. She had been there, the rescuer who saved his older twins, who heard Maria's dying plea. But why hide it? Why come here as a stranger? The love surged harder, intense and passionate, a fierce protectiveness that made his chest ache. Yet inner torment raged, remorse for Maria, guilt that his life's shadows had cost Emily her mobility, her child, her everything. Violent conflict gripped him, desire to hold her warring with fear of betrayal. Outside drama escalated unexpectedly. His phone buzzed a tip from a lookout rival, scouts probing the perimeter again. Vincent pocketed the photo and hurried out, confronting them on a darkened side street near the estate. The men, 3 from the opposing crew, stood bold under streetlights, smirking. Russo once sneered, "Heard you got a new bird in the nest." "Fragile one." Vincent's jaw clenched. He stepped forward, voice low and commanding. "Back off. This ends now." Tension built, words exchanged like barbs. Hands hovering near jackets, but no blows landed. The rivals retreated with threats, tires squealing into the night. Vincent stood alone, heart-pounding, guilt intensifying. His world endangered her again. Back inside, Emily returned to her room, unaware of the intrusion at first. But as she reached for the photo, horror struck. It was missing. Anxiety flooded her. She searched frantically, dizziness making her sway, loss of balance sending her chair tipping slightly. Pain shot through her spine, a reminder of that night. Confusion numbed her. Had she misplaced it? The mansion's wealth pressed in, mockingly gold-trimmed mirrors, reflecting her thin, exhausted face, while she had once pawned her mother's ring for rent. Unjust, absurd, poverty's humiliations, endless now, compounded by this violation. Vincent watched from the hall, shadows torn. The love burned overwhelming, but suspicion held him back. He replaced the photo later, unseen, his hands lingering. The night deepened into quiet, emotional stillness. Emily curled in bed, tears silent, inner torment. Violent fear of discovery, curiosity about this powerful man who stirred strange warmth despite everything. Little did she know Vincent's heart was shattering further, the passionate pull drawing him inexorably closer amid the escalating shadows. The days following the discovery of the photograph stretched into a quiet agony for both Vincent Russo and Emily Harper. October deepened in the year 2025. Leaves turning brilliant reds and golds across the vast estate grounds. While inside the mansion, the air grew thick with unspoken truths. Emily moved through her duties with increasing care, wheeling from nursery to playroom, her thin frame bending to lift Nico or Mateo onto her lap for story time, her malnourished body protesting every effort. Hunger still whispered to her old habits from years of stretching. A single loaf of bread across a week. but the kitchen staff pressed plates upon her warm oatmeal. With fresh berries, sandwiches on artisan bread meals she accepted with timid politeness, cheeks flushing at the abundance after so many nights of cold wind slicing through her unheated apartment. Yet the missing photograph haunted her. She had found it returned to its place the next morning, but the knowledge that someone had touched it, that perhaps Vincent himself had seen it, filled her with horror and anxiety. Confusion spun in dizzying circles. Why had he not confronted her? Fear guarded her every glance toward the hallway. Cameras, those unblinking eyes that followed her movements. She felt exposed, powerless, the disparity between her pitiful past and this gilded present, a constant humiliation. Tears came in quiet moments alone when the children napped, tears for the child she had lost that night, for the mobility stolen, for the years of scraping by on charity and pride. Vincent, meanwhile, wrestled with demons that grew more violent by the hour. In his expansive office walls, lined with leather-bound books, he rarely read a mahogany desk imported from Italy, windows overlooking private gardens he pored over reports from his private investigator. The facts poured in like salt on open wounds. Emily Harper, bystander waitress driving home from a late shift, had crawled from her wrecked vehicle despite catastrophic injuries to drag Luca and Sofia from the flames. Dashcam audio recovered from a surviving truck confirmed Maria's final words whispered through bloodied lips. "Find my babies, all 4 of them. Love them for me. Promise me you'll watch over them." Emily's soft, broken "I promise" echoed in the recording, tearing Vincent's heart anew. Remorse consumed him in waves. His world, his power, his enemies had paralyzed this fragile woman, had taken her unborn child through trauma-induced loss in the emergency room that same night. Guilt gnawed deeper than ever. Maria gone because of him, Emily shattered because of him. Yet the love that had ignited at first sight now blazed into an inferno, passionate, intense, burning away reason. He ached to kneel before her wheelchair, to confess everything, to swear protection for the rest of her life. Suspicion lingered only as ash. The truth had extinguished it. But violent inner conflict raged. How could he deserve her forgiveness, her presence, when his choices had cost her everything? One afternoon, unable to bear the distance, Vincent summoned his most trusted investigator to the estate's private study, a room of dark wood, paneling Persian rugs worth small fortunes, and a fireplace large enough to warm a lesser home entirely. The man laid out hospital records, anonymous donation trails leading back to Emily's meager bank account, money scraped from double shifts and disability checks, funneled into therapy for Luca and Sofia, toys and clothing left at the gate over the years. Vincent's hands shook as he traced the numbers. She had sacrificed in secret while enduring abject poverty, eviction threats, utility shutoffs, nights when hunger kept her awake beside rattling windows. The injustice of it, of her suffering while he lived in luxury, tore at him with fresh violence. That evening, drama escalated beyond the estate walls. Word had spread among rival crews that Vincent's household held a new vulnerability. A black sedan tailed Emily's supervised outing to a nearby park with the children, and rare excursion approved for fresh air. Vincent, alerted by security, intercepted the vehicle on a quiet Winnetka side street lined with oak trees. He stepped from his armored SUV alone, fair-skinned face, set like stone, confronting the 3 men inside. "You follow my family again," he said, voice low and lethal, "and there won't be a next time." The driver smirked, words sharp with threat, but Vincent's presence, wealth, and power embodied forced retreat. Tires spun on fallen leaves as they fled. Vincent stood in the cooling dusk chest, heaving remorse, surging. His enemies now circled her because of him. Back home, Emily sensed the shift. The children spoke their first tentative words to her that day, Luca whispering "thank you" after she helped him reach a toy. Sofia smiling faintly at a story about baseball heroes. Joy flickered in Emily's heart, but it warred with growing fear. She caught Vincent watching from doorways, his dark eyes holding something fierce and tender that made her breath catch. Curiosity mingled with guarded anxiety. What did he know? The dizziness returned in quiet moments, numbness spreading as she wondered if this fragile sanctuary would vanish as suddenly as it had appeared. Late that night, unable to sleep, Vincent sat in the nursery shadows while Emily finished tucking the toddlers in. Moonlight filtered through expensive silk curtains, illuminating her thin silhouette as she sang the lullaby again, soft, timid, filled with unspoken grief. He waited until she wheeled into the adjoining sitting room, then stepped forward. "Miss Harper," he said gently, voice rough with emotion. Emily startled, nearly losing balance in her chair. Shock and confusion flooded her. Pain flared along her spine. "Russo," she whispered, polite even through fear. Is everything all right?" He knelt before her wheelchair, an act so humbling, for a man of his power, that it stole her breath. From his pocket he drew the photograph, holding it out like an offering. "You were there," he said, voice breaking. "That night, you saved my children. My wife, She spoke to you. Tears filled Emily's eyes instantly. Horror, relief, deep disorientation crashed over her in waves. She nodded, unable to speak at first. I promised her, she finally managed, voice soft and trembling. I couldn't break that promise. Not ever. Vincent's hand covered hers on the armrest, warm, strong, careful. The touch ignited fire in both of them. His love surged, overwhelming in passionate eyes, searching hers with raw intensity. You lost everything because of that night, he whispered. Because of my world. And still you came here. Still you gave what little you had. Emily's heart tore violently, shock at his knowledge, fear that he would send her away, yet beneath it a strange, dizzying warmth at his nearness. The disparity struck harder than ever, this powerful man on his knees before her pitiful self, thin and broken from years of cold nights and empty cupboards. Unjust, absurd. Yet his remorse mirrored her own grief. I didn't come for thanks, she said timidly, only to keep my word to her. Vincent's throat worked. You've kept it more than anyone could ask. Inner conflict raged. He wanted to pull her into his arms to vow the rest of his life to her healing, but guilt screamed he had no right. The burning love won a small victory. He pressed her hand gently. Stay, please. Let us take care of you now. Silence stretched heavy with condensed emotion. Outside, wind rattled the windows, a reminder of the cold nights Emily had endured alone. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She felt numb balance lost in the surge of his gaze. For the first time in years, despair cracked open to something dangerously close to hope. And in Vincent's heart, the revelation only deepened the passionate fire love, no longer a spark, but a blaze threatening to consume them both. The revelation hung between Vincent Russo and Emily Harper like a fragile thread, pulling them closer even as it threatened to snap under the weight of shared sorrow. October nights in the year 2025 grew cooler along the Lake Michigan shore, the estate's grand windows framing views of moonlit waves that Vincent had once shared with Maria on private yacht evenings. Now those same windows reflected Emily's thin silhouette as she moved through the children's wing, her wheelchair gliding over heated hardwood floors that cost more to install than Emily had earned in any single year of her impoverished life. Emily's days filled with the children in ways that both healed and tormented her. She baked simple apple pies in the mansion's professional-grade kitchen. Stainless steel appliances, gleaming pantries stocked with ingredients, flown in from organic farms, recalling Maria's 4th of July traditions she had learned from. Old family photos left thoughtfully on the counter by the staff. The toddlers, Nico and Mateo, perched on her lap or beside her chair, giggling as she let them stir the cinnamon-scented filling. Luca and Sophia watched from their own chairs, eyes gradually softening. Emily read to them from beautifully illustrated books about Chicago baseball legends, her voice soft and timid, pausing to answer their hesitant questions. Did Mama like the Cubs best? Luca asked one afternoon. Emily's heart twisted. She nodded gently. She loved them with all her heart, just like she loved you. Each small breakthrough, Sophia's first voluntary smile. Luca reaching for a toy without prompting felt like grace to Emily. Yet the disparity struck her anew, in quiet moments. These children surrounded by every comfort while she remembered nights in Englewood, when cold wind howled through cracked walls, when she had wrapped her thin body in newspaper for warmth. After the heat was shut off, malnutrition still shadowed her features. Sleep remained elusive, haunted by memories of hunger pangs sharp enough to double her over. The mansion's luxury mocked her past humiliations, showers with endless hot water, when she had once rationed cold trickles, closets filled with new clothes pressed upon her by Rosa, when her own wardrobe consisted of patched hand-me-downs. Vincent watched it all through the cameras, unable to stay away for long. His office had become a place of torment screens, showing Emily's gentle interactions, her quiet strength, despite evident fragility. The love that had begun as a spark now consumed him, entirely passionate, intense, burning through every defense. He found excuses to linger in the playroom doorway, drawn by the way she coaxed laughter from his children, the way she wiped tears with a tenderness that mirrored Maria's yet carried its own unique light. But remorse tore at him violently every smile she drew from Luca, or Sophia reminded him that his enemies had stolen, their mother had paralyzed this woman who now gave them hope. Guilt gnawed deeper. How could he feel this overwhelming surge for Emily, when Maria's absence was his fault? The inner conflict grew unbearable. In the dead of night, Vincent paced his master suite vast bedroom with a fireplace large enough for gatherings, silk sheets imported from Italy, a balcony overlooking private gardens, tormented by visions of Emily alone in her guest room, perhaps crying as quietly as she did everything else. He wanted to go to her, to hold her, to promise that no cold night would ever touch her again. Yet fear of dishonoring Maria's memory warred with the burning need to protect and cherish this woman who had sacrificed everything for a stranger's dying wish. One crisp afternoon, Vincent joined them in the sunlit playroom. Emily looked up, startled, her voice soft and polite. Mr. Russo. The formality pierced him. He longed to hear his name on her lips. He knelt beside her chair as the toddlers played nearby, watching her help Sophia arrange soft blocks into a tower. "You're incredible with them," he said, voice rough with emotion. Emily flushed, guarded curiosity in her eyes. "They make it easy, sir. They're beautiful children." The moment stretched into condensed stillness. Vincent's hand brushed hers as he steadied a block for Sophia, accidental yet electric. Emily felt dizziness sweep through her, numbness in her fingers, a strange loss of inner balance. This powerful man whose wealth surrounded them like air, looking at her with eyes that held storms and tenderness both. Shock and confusion warred with a warmth she dared not name. From desperate poverty to this, to being seen, truly seen by someone who could command entire rooms with a glance. It felt unjust, absurd, a cruel dream that might vanish. Drama escalated beyond the walls that same week. Rival crews, sensing Vincent's distraction, grew bolder. One evening, as Emily wheeled the older twins through the secure gardens for fresh air, paths lined with imported roses, fountains, murmuring softly, a suspicious van circled the outer perimeter. Security alerted Vincent instantly. He intercepted them on a nearby street in downtown Winnetka, stepping from his vehicle alone under street lamps. 4 men emerged, postures aggressive. "Rumor is you're getting soft, Russo," one taunted. "New help in the house catching your eye." Vincent's response was ice words, sharp presence commanding. "Touch my family, any of them, and you'll regret breathing." Tension crackled. Hands hovered near coats, but Vincent's reputation forced retreat. The van sped away. He stood in the aftermath, heart-pounding remorse surging anew, his world endangered, Emily and the children again. That night, unable to sleep, Vincent slipped into the playroom, where Emily sat by the window, Bible open in her lap, though her eyes stared into darkness. Moonlight illuminated her thin profile, tears silent on her cheeks. He approached slowly. "Emily," he said, dropping formality for the first time. She startled, nearly tipping her chair, pain flashing across her face. "Mr. Russo, I didn't hear you." He knelt again, closer this time. "You don't have to call me that. Not anymore." His voice broke slightly. "What you've done for my children, for me, I can never repay." Emily's breath caught. Anxiety and heightened curiosity mingled. "I only kept a promise," she whispered timidly. Vincent reached out gently, wiping a tear from her cheek. The touch lingered, warm, careful. "You gave when you had nothing left to give," he said, voice thick. Remorse choked him. "While I live in all this because of choices that hurt you." The love blazed in his eyes, passionate and overwhelming. Emily felt the world tilt, dizziness, numbness, deep disorientation. A man like him seeing her misery, her poverty-scarred body and soul, and still looking at her with reverence. Tears fell faster. Inner torment tore violently. Fear that this kindness was temporary, confusion at the intensity in his gaze. Shock that someone powerful might truly care. Silence enveloped them, heavy and sacred. Outside wind stirred the garden trees, a faint echo of the cold nights Emily once endured alone. Vincent's hand remained near hers, not quite touching again, inner conflict, raging desire to pull her close, battling guilt that screamed he had no right. Yet the burning love won small victories. He stayed beside her chair until her tears slowed, a silent promise forming in the stillness. Emily's heart tore in new ways, gratitude warring with terror, that this fragile connection might shatter, leaving her more broken than before. And in Vincent's soul, the deeper bonding he observed in her with his children now mirrored the bond, forming with him a passionate fire that threatened to consume guilt and remorse alike, drawing them inexorably toward a future neither dared fully imagine. The fragile peace that had begun to settle over the Russo estate shattered like glass under a sudden October storm in the year 2025. Emily Harper, still adjusting to the warmth of heated floors and endless hot meals, found small joys in the children's growing trust. Luca now reached for her hand without hesitation. Sophia whispered questions about her mother's favorite baseball stories. Nico and Matteo clambered onto her wheelchair for rides around the playroom, their laughter a balm to Emily's weary soul. Yet the old shadows clung nights when sleep evaded her, memories of cold winds slicing through her Englewood apartment, of days when hunger had been so fierce she could barely stand. The mansion's opulence, the crystal vases filled with fresh orchids, the private chef's gourmet dinners served on fine china, only deepened the humiliation of her past. She accepted new clothes with timid thanks, but inside confusion and guarded fear warred. How long before this dream ended, and she returned to powerlessness? Vincent Russo's love burned hotter with every passing day. An intense, passionate fire, that consumed his thoughts. He lingered longer in the children's wing, finding excuses to help Emily with the toddlers, or sit beside her during story time. His touches grew braver, fingers brushing hers as he passed a book, a hand steadying her chair over a threshold. Each contact sent sparks through him, yet remorse tore violently deeper. Maria's portrait still hung in the grand hallway, her smile a silent accusation. Guilt gnawed at him. His empire had cost 2 women. Everything: Maria, her life; Emily, her mobility and child. How could he claim happiness with the very woman his world had broken? The first shocking twist came on a rain-slicked evening, when Vincent's most trusted capo, Marco, his own cousin raised like a brother, arrived unannounced at the estate. Marco had stood beside Vincent through every trial, shared family dinners, been godfather to Luca. In the wood-paneled study, surrounded by leather chairs and a fireplace roaring with imported hardwood, Marco laid out new opportunities for territory expansion. His words were smooth, but Vincent's instincts prickled. Late that night, alone in his office, Vincent cross-referenced route logs from 3 years ago. The truth hit like a thunderclap. Marco had deliberately leaked Vincent's location to the rivals that fateful evening, hoping a war would force Vincent to cede control and enrich Marco's own faction. Maria's death had been no accident of war. It had been calculated betrayal by family. Vincent's heart shattered anew. Remorse and rage collided in violent conflict. He confronted Marco the next dawn on a deserted Chicago side street near the old stockyards, rain pounding the pavement. Marco stepped from his car with 2 enforcers, smirking. "You were getting soft, Vinny. Needed a push." Vincent's voice was steel. "You killed my wife. You paralyzed an innocent woman." For territory, words flew like knives. Tension built, until Marco's men shifted uneasily. Vincent's presence, wealth, power, reputation, forced them back without a blow. Marco retreated with a venomous glare, but the war he had long coveted now ignited fully. The betrayal's ripples reached Emily almost immediately. Rival crews, emboldened by internal whispers of Russo weakness, struck closer. One afternoon, during a supervised drive-by errand to pick up specialized therapy toys from a North Shore shop, a rare outing Vincent had approved with heavy security, a black SUV tailed them aggressively. Gunfire grazed the escort vehicle. Emily shielded the children in the back seat. Her wheelchair tipped as the driver swerved. A bullet shattered a window, grazing her shoulder in a burning line. Pain exploded. Dizziness and numbness overwhelmed her. Blood soaked her new sweater, the first nice clothing she had owned in years. Horror and fear tore at her heart, the children's cries, the unfairness of danger finding her again when she had only come to help. Vincent arrived minutes later, having raced from a downtown meeting. He found the scene on a quiet suburban street, police lights flashing, his security holding the perimeter, Emily pale and trembling as medics bandaged her shoulder. He pushed through, dropping to his knees beside her in the ambulance bay. "Emily," he rasped, voice breaking. His hand cupped her uninjured cheek, eyes wild with terror and love. The passionate surge overwhelmed him, burning fierce protectiveness that made his chest ache. "I'm sorry. This is my fault." Emily looked up at him, shock and confusion numbing her pain. Blood loss made the world tilt. She felt loss of balance even seated. "Mr. Russo." "Vincent," she whispered, timidly polite even through tears. "The children, are they—" Her voice trailed off, inner torment violent. Why did misfortune follow her? From desperate poverty to this loved yet endangered by the very man whose gaze promised safety. "They're safe," he said fiercely. "Because of you." Again, guilt consumed him. Remorse for Marco's betrayal, for dragging Emily deeper into his shadowed world. The love blazed hotter. He wanted to carry her away from all harm, to spend his fortune erasing every scar his life had inflicted. Back at the estate, in the medical suite, equipped better than most clinics. Sterile white cabinets stocked with supplies, monitors beeping softly. Vincent refused to leave her side as doctors stitched the graze. Emily lay pale against silk pillows, thin frame trembling. Quiet, condensed stillness settled between them. "You should have never been hurt again," he whispered, hand gently holding hers. "Not because of me." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I chose to come," she said softly, "for Maria's promise." But inside, emotions tore violently, gratitude for his care warring with fear that his world would destroy what little she had rebuilt. The disparity struck anew, his wealth summoning private physicians, while she remembered treating wounds with dollar store bandages in cold apartments. That night Vincent sat alone in his study, betrayal's sting sharpening every regret. Marco's actions had not only killed Maria but endangered Emily, the woman who had become his heart's fierce new center. The passionate love surged against gnawing remorse, inner conflict threatening to tear him apart. He vowed silently no one would touch her again. Emily, bandaged and medicated in her room, stared at the ceiling. Pain throbbed, but deeper ached the shock of his tenderness, the way he had knelt in the rain uncaring of his expensive suit. From abject poverty where no one had ever fought for her to this a powerful man's burning devotion. It felt absurdly unfair, dizzying, terrifying. Tears fell silently as wind rattled the mansion windows, a faint echo of colder nights past. The war had only begun, and with it, the stakes for their hearts rose ever higher. The graze on Emily Harper's shoulder healed slowly, a thin scar forming beneath the soft bandages changed daily by the private nurse Vincent had summoned. October's last days in the year 2025 slipped away like sand. The estate's grounds carpeted in fallen leaves, swept daily by groundskeepers. The lake beyond the gates turning steel gray under gathering clouds. Inside, the mansion's wealth pressed in on Emily with increasing intensity. Fresh flowers replaced every morning in crystal vases worth more than her old monthly rent meals, prepared by a chef who consulted her timid preferences as though she were royalty. New clothes laid out in her expanded closet, simple yet fine fabrics she touched with disbelieving fingers. Yet the luxury only sharpened memories of her past misery nights when cold wind had knifed through broken windows, when she had curled thin and malnourished on a sagging mattress counting coins for a single loaf of bread. The children clung to her more fiercely since the shooting. Luca and Sofia asked her not to leave the playroom. Nico and Matteo cried if she wheeled out of sight. Their need anchored her, yet fear gnawed deeper fear that Vincent's world would claim them next. Confusion and guarded anxiety shadowed her soft voice whenever she spoke to him. "Vincent," she whispered one evening, polite, even in pain, "I don't want to bring more danger to your home." Vincent Russo's heart tore with fresh violence at her words. The passionate love that consumed him now warred against overwhelming remorse. Marco's betrayal had reopened every wound Maria dead, Emily injured again, all because of the empire he had built and protected with ruthless resolve. Guilt crashed over him in waves, violent and unrelenting. How could he keep her here, surrounded by targets painted on his back? Yet the thought of her leaving, of returning to the poverty that had nearly destroyed her, ignited a burning protectiveness that made his chest ache. He watched her from doorways, drinking in the quiet strength she showed the children, the way her thin hands steadied Sophia's during therapy exercises. Love blazed, hotter, intense, and desperate, clashing with the terror of losing her. The confrontation came on a rain-drenched night. Vincent found Emily in the conservatory, a glass-walled room filled with exotic plants flown in from warmer climates, heated to perfection, overlooking the stormy lake. She sat gazing at the lightning-bandaged shoulder, stiff face, pale in the dim light. He approached slowly, kneeling beside her chair as he had so many times before. "Emily," he began, voice rough with emotion, "we need to talk." She turned eyes wide with guarded curiosity and fear. "Yes, Vincent." Her voice remained soft, timid, the politeness of someone who had learned early that power could turn cruel. He took her uninjured hand, gently his larger one engulfing hers. "The men who shot at you, they won't stop. Not while you're here. Not while the war Marco started rages." His throat tightened. "I can't lose you. Not after everything." The confession hung heavy, love laid bare, passionate and burning. Yet remorse twisted it. "But keeping you here, it's selfish. It endangers you and the children more." Emily's heart stuttered. Shock and confusion flooded her. Dizziness swept in numbness, spreading through her limbs. This powerful man, whose wealth commanded private jets and armed guards, whose word could silence rooms, was choosing her safety over his own need. Tears welled. You want me to leave." Her voice broke small and pleading despite her effort to stay polite. Vincent's grip tightened carefully. "Only until I end this. A safe house far from Chicago, fully protected everything you and the children could need." His eyes searched hers, tormented. "I can't bear another scar on you because of me." Inner conflict tore at him violently. The love screamed to keep her close, to shield her within his fortress. But guilt for Maria, for Emily's past suffering, for the fresh wound overrode it. He had to protect her even from himself. Emily pulled her hand away gently, pain flashing across her face, not just physical. Horror and anxiety gripped her. Leave the children, return to isolation, even if cushioned by his wealth. Memories surged, cold nights alone, hunger's cruel bite, the humiliating charity lines. Yet his concern, fierce, protective, warmed places long frozen. Confusion numbed her thoughts. "The children need me," she whispered. "And I don't want to go." The argument stretched, voices low but intense. Vincent's remorse fueled his insistence. Emily's fear of abandonment, of losing this fragile family, fueled her refusal. Tears streamed down her thin cheeks. "Please don't send me away," she finally pleaded, voice trembling. The words broke something in him, but danger escalated again, forcing his hand. That same night, rivals probed the estate's outer gates. Vincent confronted them on a slick downtown Chicago street near the river, 5 men in 2 cars, taunting from rolled-down windows. "Heard your new girl's pretty fragile, Russo. Easy target." Vincent stepped forward alone under streetlights, rain soaking his coat, presence commanding silence. "Come near my home again," he warned, voice lethal calm, "and there won't be pieces left to find." Tension crackled. Engines revved but retreated. He returned, soaked resolve hardened. Dawn brought the unbearable decision. Vincent arranged everything: a secluded lake house in northern Wisconsin, staffed with loyal guards, stocked with every comfort. Groceries delivered, medical care, on-call toys, and books for the children. He drove Emily and the 4 little ones himself, the convoy guarded front and back. The journey north was silent agony. Emily sat beside him, thin frame, trembling, tears silent. The children sensed the wrongness. Nico and Matteo fussed. Luca and Sofia stared out windows with wide, confused eyes. At the beautiful but isolated house wraparound porch overlooking quiet waters, rooms warmed by fireplaces. Vincent carried luggage inside, his strength belying the torment, tearing his heart. He knelt before Emily one last time in the spacious living room. "This is temporary," he vowed, voice breaking. "I'll end the war. Then you come home." The word home slipped out, laden with passionate meaning. Emily's world spun: dizziness, numbness, deep disorientation. From desperate poverty to this loved fiercely by a man whose power could move mountains, yet exiled for her own safety. Unjust, absurd cruelty. Tears fell unchecked. "Promise me you'll be safe," she whispered timidly. He cupped her face gently, thumb brushing her tears. "I promise." Their foreheads touched in quiet, condensed stillness, love burning between them, unspoken yet overwhelming. Vincent left before he could change his mind, driving back into the storm. Remorse and love warred violently within him. He had protected her, but at the cost of tearing his own heart in two. Emily watched his taillights disappear, shoulder throbbing, soul aching. The children's cries echoed through the beautiful prison. Alone again, despite the luxury, she felt the old cold creep in, not from wind but from absence. Inner torment raged gratitude for his sacrifice, clashing with terror that she had finally found family only to lose it again. The exile had begun, and with it the deepest tearing yet of 2 hearts bound by fate and fire. Weeks bled into one another in the secluded Wisconsin lake house, where late October in the year 2025 brought early frosts that silvered the windows and turned the surrounding woods into a cathedral of bare branches. The house itself was a haven of Vincent's wealth: stone fireplaces that roared at the touch of a switch, a kitchen stocked with provisions delivered by private courier, bedrooms with down comforters thick enough to swallow sorrow. Guards patrolled the perimeter in shifts, their presence a constant reminder that safety here was bought with Vincent's power. Yet for Emily Harper, the beauty felt like a gilded cage. She wheeled from room to room, caring for the 4 children, her thin arms aching from lifting Nico and Matteo, her bandaged shoulder still tender. The children asked for their father daily, Luca and Sofia with quiet pleading eyes, the toddlers with tearful whines. Emily soothed them with stories and songs. Her voice soft and timid, but inside anxiety gnawed relentlessly. Memories of her old poverty haunted the quiet hours, the humiliating sting of food pantry lines, nights when cold wind had driven her to burn phone books in a rusted barrel for warmth, the malnourished hollow in her stomach that no amount of stocked pantries could fully erase. Here abundance surrounded her: fresh fruit bowls, replenished daily hot showers that never ran cold, yet the disparity tore at her heart. She felt undeserving, an imposter in this world of plenty, waiting for the inevitable fall back into powerlessness. Letters from Vincent arrived by courier, brief, carefully worded notes promising the war's end soon, expressing how deeply he missed them all. Each one stirred confusing warmth and fear. His love, glimpsed in every line, felt too vast for someone as broken as she. Vincent, back in Chicago, threw himself into ending the conflict with ruthless focus. His empire's resources, private intelligence networks, fleets of armored vehicles, connections that reached into City Hall were mobilized fully. Street confrontations multiplied, tense standoffs in abandoned warehouses near the river. Bold exchanges on rain-slicked avenues in the Loop, where rival crews tested his resolve. He faced them alone or with minimal escort, fair-skinned face set in stone, voice carrying the weight of unquestioned authority. "This ends now," he repeated, forcing retreats without escalation. Yet each victory tasted ash. Remorse consumed him. Marco's betrayal, Maria's death, Emily's exile, all traced back to his choices. The passionate love for Emily burned fiercer in separation, a constant torment that drove him onward. He dreamed of her thin silhouette by the lake, of returning to claim the family he had nearly lost. The second shocking twist struck without warning on a foggy November morning, though the calendar still lingered in late October's grip for Emily's counting of days. Rivals desperate to break Vincent's momentum discovered the safe house location through a paid informant among the delivery staff. Masked men breached the outer perimeter at dawn, neutralizing 2 guards with swift efficiency. Alarms shrieked. remaining security engaged in a frantic holding action. Emily woke to the chaos. Gunfire echoes, shouts the children's terrified cries. Heart pounding, she wheeled frantically to the nursery, gathering Luca and Sophia into her lap, while scooping Nico and Matteo close. "Shh, my loves," she whispered, voice trembling but polite in its calm. "We'll be safe. I promise." The intruders stormed the house. Emily shielded the children in a walk-in closet, her thin body a frail barrier. Rough hands dragged her out. Pain exploded in her healing shoulder as they bound her wrists. Horror flooded her, dizziness, numbness, loss of balance, even in the chair they forced her into. The children screamed as they were separated into another vehicle. A live video feed began. Emily, pale and bloodied from a fresh cut on her forehead, bound in her wheelchair in a cold warehouse, the rival boss's voice mocking through the speaker. "Tell Russo we have his precious rescuer. Time to negotiate." The broadcast reached Vincent within minutes, routed through his intelligence network. He watched in his downtown penthouse office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He ruled leather furniture and original art, now meaningless. Seeing Emily bound, frightened yet defiant as she comforted the unseen children with soft words, shattered something inside him. Rage and remorse collided in violent, tearing conflict. Love surged to new intensity, passionate, burning, all-consuming. This was his fault again. He had sent her away for safety only to deliver her into worse danger. Vincent acted alone against every advisor's plea. He traced the warehouse to an industrial district south of the city, arriving at dusk in a nondescript vehicle. Flames already licked the building's edges, rivals planning to destroy evidence. He stormed through a side entrance, moving with lethal precision, born of years at the top. Confrontations flashed in corridors, rivals emerging from shadows, words sharp with threat. "You're alone, Russo." Finished. Vincent's response was ice and fire combined. "You touched what's mine." Presence and reputation forced hesitation. He disarmed and subdued without fatal escalation, driven by the sound of Emily's muffled voice deeper inside. He found her in the main bay, bound to her chair amid growing flames, the children safely secured in an adjacent office by a guard who had switched sides at the last moment. Smoke stung his eyes. Heat blistered the air. Vincent cut her bonds with shaking hands, lifting her into his arms as the chair toppled. "I've got you," he rasped, voice raw. Emily clung to him, dizziness and pain overwhelming, yet his strength anchored her. Shock and deep disorientation warred with relief from abject fear to this, carried through fire by the man whose love had become her world. He carried her out through collapsing beams, flames roaring behind. The children followed with the redeemed guard. Outside, in the cold night air, Vincent collapsed to his knees on wet pavement. Emily cradled against his chest. Sirens wailed in the distance, his own forces arriving. Tears cut tracks through soot on his face. "Forgive me," he whispered, remorse tearing violently. "I almost lost you forever." Emily's thin fingers touched his cheek, voice soft and trembling. "You came for us." Confusion numbed the pain. The disparity struck anew. This powerful man risking everything for her pitiful self. Tears mingled with smoke. Inner torment raged, gratitude, love returned in quiet surges, fear that such passion could not last. In the ambulance bay, later private medical team waiting, Vincent refused treatment until Emily and the children were tended. He held her hand as medics worked, eyes never leaving hers. The love blazed openly now, passionate and fierce. No more separation, he vowed. Ever. Quiet, condensed stillness settled between them amid the chaos. Emily's heart tore in new profound ways from the depths of poverty and exile to this blazing devotion. Unjust fate had taken so much, yet given her this man whose remorse and love promised to rebuild everything. The war teetered on its end, but their bond forged anew in fire had become unbreakable. The private medical facility on the outskirts of Chicago gleamed with the quiet opulence Vincent Russo's. Wealth could command sterile white corridors lined with original artwork. Private suites equipped with every monitoring device known to. Modern medicine staff that moved with discreet efficiency. November had barely begun beyond the October shadows of the year 2025. Yet the night of the rescue felt etched in eternal flame. Emily Harper lay in a wide hospital bed, dressed in soft linens, her thin frame dwarfed by pillows, fresh bandages on her forehead and shoulder. The children Luca, Sophia, Nico, and Matteo slept in an adjoining room, under the watchful eyes of trusted nurses, exhausted from terror but unharmed. Emily drifted in and out of medicated sleep pain, a dull throb beneath the haze. When consciousness returned, fully dizziness swept over her in waves, numbness spreading through her limbs. As memories crashed back the warehouse, the flames Vincent carrying her through hell, shock and deep disorientation gripped her heart. From the depths of poverty nights, when cold wind had sliced through her thin coat as she wheeled home from double shifts, when malnutrition had left her too weak to stand. To this rescued dramatically by a man whose power could bend the city itself. It felt unjust, absurd, a dream too fragile to trust. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Inner torment tore violently. She had nearly lost the children she had promised to protect. She had nearly died again because of a world she never chose. Vincent refused to leave her side. He sat in a leather armchair pulled close to the bed, fair-skinned face gaunt from exhaustion and soot still shadowing his jaw. His expensive coat lay discarded. The tailored shirt beneath was torn and stained. Wealth surrounded him, even here private physicians on call security in the hallway, yet remorse consumed him like acid. Guilt for Maria, for Emily's scars, old and new, for the betrayal that had led to this night. The passionate love that had driven him through fire now roared unchecked, intense and burning, clashing with violent self-loathing. How many times would his life hurt her before she was free of him? When Emily's eyes opened fully and found his, a quiet, condensed stillness settled over the room. Monitors beeped softly. Outside city lights glittered through reinforced windows. Vincent leaned forward, taking her uninjured hand with infinite care. "You're safe," he whispered, voice raw. "All of you." Emily's breath caught. Anxiety and heightened curiosity mingled with overwhelming gratitude. His hand, strong, warm, the hand of a man who commanded empires, held hers as though it were the most precious thing in his world. "The children," she asked, voice soft and timid, polite, even through lingering fear. "Sleeping. Unhurt." His thumb brushed her knuckles. "Because of you. You kept them calm until the end." Tears filled her eyes again. "I was so scared," she admitted, small voice trembling. I thought we'd never see you again." The confession broke the dam. Vincent rose, perching carefully on the bed's edge, cradling her hand against his chest. "I thought the same," he rasped. "When I saw that video, knowing you were in there." His voice cracked. Remorse tore free in a torrent. "This is my fault. All of it. Maria, your injuries that night. The exile. This." He gestured helplessly at her bandages. "My world keeps taking from you, and still you give everything." Emily's heart tore anew, shock at his raw vulnerability, confusion at the depth of his guilt. From desperate, powerless years begging for extensions on overdue bills, enduring humiliating medical charity exams, to this a powerful man unraveling before her, blaming himself for her pain. Dizziness returned. The room tilted. "You saved us," she whispered. "You came alone. Risked everything." Vincent shook his head fiercely. "Not enough. Never enough." His free hand cupped her cheek, thumb wiping tears. The touch ignited fire between them, electric, desperate. "I sent you away to protect you, and it nearly killed you. I can't." His throat worked. "I can't lose you, Emily. Not after finding you." The words hung heavy, love, laid bare, passionate, and overwhelming. Emily's breath hitched. Numbness spread, yet warmth bloomed beneath it. Extreme psychological shock gripped her. This man whose wealth could buy cities, whose power made men tremble, confessing need for her, for the thin, broken woman who had once scavenged dumpsters for returnable cans. "I'm so sorry, Vincent," continued voice breaking fully now, "for the night of the crash, for the years you suffered alone while I lived in luxury built on the same shadows that hurt you, for every cold night you endured, every meal you skipped, every tear you cried thinking no one saw." Tears glistened in his own eyes. "You kept Maria's promise when you had nothing. You saved my children twice. And I love you. God help me, I love you with everything I am." The confession exploded between them like the warehouse flames. Emily's world spun deep disorientation, pain forgotten in the surge. From abject poverty, where love had seemed an impossible luxury, to this loved fiercely, protectively by a man whose remorse matched his passion. Tears streamed unchecked. "Vincent," she whispered, voice trembling yet soft. I was so alone for so long. And then you saw me. Even when I was invisible." He leaned closer, forehead resting gently against hers. "You were never invisible. Not to me. From the first moment I saw you on those cameras, thin, tired, but moving with such grace, I felt it. This burning. This need to protect you, to give you everything I stole from the world." His voice dropped to a raw whisper. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I can't live without you in my life." Silence stretched sacred and heavy. Monitors beeped. Outside a distant siren wailed. Emily's thin fingers tightened around his. Inner worlds tore violently, fear that this intensity could not last, gratitude that threatened to overwhelm love. Quiet growing returned in waves she barely understood. "I don't know how to be loved like this," she admitted at last, voice small. "I don't know how to belong in your world." Vincent's eyes blazed with fierce tenderness. "Then let me belong in yours." Let me spend every day making up for the years the world was cruel to you." He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, careful, reverent. "No more exile, no more separation. You and the children, you're my home." Emily closed her eyes, dizziness and warmth mingling. The disparity struck one final poignant time, from cold, wind-swept nights alone to this blazing devotion in a room that cost more per night than she once earned in a month. Unjust fate had taken everything, yet given her this man whose heart now beat in rhythm with hers. In the quiet aftermath, as Vincent held her carefully until sleep reclaimed her, the crisis birthed raw truth. Two shattered souls forged together in fire and remorse, beginning to heal through a love fierce enough to burn away the past. The war ended not with thunder, but with a series of quiet, decisive meetings in the weeks following the warehouse rescue. Vincent Russo, drawing on every ounce of his wealth and influence, orchestrated final confrontations on neutral ground. Dimly lit private clubs in downtown Chicago abandoned lots near the lakefront, under November's gray skies. Rivals arrived, expecting negotiation. They left with no choice but surrender. Vincent's presence alone, fair-skinned face, calm yet unyielding voice, carrying the authority of a man who had walked through fire, forced capitulation. No further escalation occurred. The remaining crews dissolved or pledged loyalty. By early December, though, the calendar still felt anchored in the lingering trauma of October. In the year 2025, peace settled over his empire like fresh snow. Vincent brought Emily and the children to a new estate on Lake Michigan's northern shore. A sprawling property even grander than the first, with private beaches, heated pools, and wings designed for family life. Security remained ironclad, but the threat had vanished. The mansion's wealth enveloped them, marble fountains in the entry hall kitchens, with every imaginable appliance, nurseries filled with custom furniture and toys sourced from artisans across the country. Staff moved discreetly, anticipating needs before they arose. Fresh flowers bloomed year-round in climate-controlled solariums. Wardrobes filled with clothes tailored to Emily's slight frame, soft fabrics she touched with wondering fingers. Emily's recovery progressed under the care of the finest specialists Vincent's resources could summon. Physical therapy strengthened her arms. Nutritionists crafted meals to gently rebuild what years of malnutrition had stolen. Yet the old shadows lingered in quiet moments. She would pause in the vast hallways, gazing at her reflection in gilded mirrors still thin, still marked by hardship, and feel dizziness sweep through her. From nights when cold wind had driven her to huddle in doorways for shelter, when sleep deprivation had left her hallucinating shadows, to this endless warmth and plenty. The disparity struck like a physical blow, unjust, overwhelming, a constant reminder of how far she had fallen before being lifted. The children flourished in the safety. Luca and Sophia spoke freely, now running to Emily with stories and drawings. Nico and Matteo toddled through sunlit rooms, calling her name in bright voices. She mothered them with quiet devotion, wheeling from playroom to garden baking, apple pies that filled the air with memories of Maria, yet carried Emily's own gentle touch. Her voice remained soft and timid when addressing the staff, polite thank yous offered with downcast eyes as if she feared overstepping. Vincent watched it all with a heart that tore daily between ecstasy and torment. The passionate love confessed in the hospital now lived openly intense and burning, no longer restrained by war or guilt's heaviest chains. He sought her, constantly joining her in the nursery at dawn, carrying her wheelchair down garden steps when snow dusted the paths, sitting beside her in the evenings as fireplaces crackled. Yet remorse still gnawed, violent inner conflict between joy and the knowledge that his world had scarred her forever. Every time he saw the faint lines of old hunger in her face, guilt surged anew. The slow-burn tension that had simmered for months finally ignited one winter evening. Snow fell softly beyond the solarium's glass walls, blanketing the estate in silence. The children slept upstairs. Staff had retired. Vincent found Emily gazing at the flakes, wrapped in a cashmere blanket he had draped over her shoulders earlier. He approached slowly, kneeling as always, but this time his hand lingered on hers with deliberate warmth. "Emily," he said, voice low and rough with emotion, "I need you to know every day since you came into our lives you've been my light." She turned eyes wide with guarded wonder and lingering fear. "Vincent." Her voice trembled, soft as always. Confusion and deep disorientation warred within her. How could this powerful man, whose wealth reshaped lives, look at her with such raw hunger? He rose, lifting her carefully into his arms, strong, reverent, and carried her to the master suite's private sitting room where a fire roared in a stone hearth, large enough to warm a village hall. He settled her on a plush sofa, kneeling again to meet her gaze. "You deserve everything," he whispered. "Every comfort I can give. Every safety, every love." The first kiss began tentative, his lips brushing hers with infinite care, asking permission. Emily's breath caught. Dizziness swept through her numbness, giving way to fire. Shock tore at her heart from years when no gentle touch had come, when poverty's cold had been her only companion to this blazing tenderness. She responded shyly at first, then with growing trust, thin fingers threading into his hair. Passion exploded, then fierce, all-consuming yet exquisitely tender. Vincent worshipped her with hands that trembled reverent over every scar, every fragile curve. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to the vast bed, dressed in silk sheets imported from distant lands. There in the firelight he loved her slowly, intensely, kisses deep and desperate along her neck, whispers of adoration against her skin. Emily blossomed beneath him, fears melting in the heat of his devotion. Her soft cries mingled with his murmured promises. The world narrowed to sensation and connection. Afterward, they lay in twined snow falling silently outside. Vincent held her close, one hand, tracing gentle patterns on her back. "I'll spend my life making sure you never know cold or hunger again," he vowed, voice thick. Remorse flickered still for the years he could not erase, but love overpowered it, passionate and protective. Emily nestled against his chest, tears of overwhelming joy slipping free. Inner worlds that had torn for so long began to mend. From desperate, powerless nights alone to this cherished, desired, safe in arms that could command cities, yet cradled her as though she were the rarest treasure. The disparity no longer humiliated. It humbled, drawing tears of gratitude. Late nights became sacred ritual. After the children slept, Vincent would find her sometimes in her wheelchair by the nursery fire, sometimes reading in the library, among leather-bound volumes worth fortunes. He would lift her, carry her to their shared suite, and love her with ever-deepening intensity. Fierce one moment, exquisitely gentle the next. In the privacy of their bed or against the solarium windows with stars beyond or before the roaring hearth, passion flared explosive yet healing. Emily, once resigned to loneliness, opened like a flower. Long denied sun. Her quiet gasps and soft pleas fueling his devotion. Her growing confidence in touch. A gift he cherished. Vincent's wealth became an extension of love. Specialists flown in for advanced therapies that promised incremental improvements. Wardrobes filled with clothes chosen for comfort and beauty. Private concerts in the music room where world-class musicians played lullabies for the children, and romantic pieces for them alone. Yet he remained attuned to her past simple gestures, like preparing hot chocolate with his own hands, wrapping her in blankets during snowstorms, holding her through nightmares of cold winds. Emily's heart, once torn by poverty's cruelty, now tore with the intensity of being loved beyond measure. Confusion lingered at times, dizzying wonder that this was real, but trust grew roots. She began to reach for him, first fingers seeking his in quiet moments, voice less timid when whispering endearments. In the firelit nights as snow blanketed their world in peace, passionate love consumed them, raw, joyous, life-affirming. Two souls once shattered by loss and hardship found in each other not just healing but fierce, unbreakable union. 1 year later, on a warm 4th of July evening, the new lakefront estate glowed with strings of soft lights draped across the private beach. Fireworks from distant lakeside towns burst in brilliant colors over Lake Michigan, reflecting on the water like scattered jewels. The children, Luca and Sofia, now 5, Nico and Matteo nearing 4, ran laughing across the sand, sparklers in careful hands, their voices bright with joy that had once seemed impossible. Emily Harper sat in a lightweight chair on the patio, watching them with eyes that shone with quiet wonder. Her body had filled out gently under months of proper care. Color warmed her cheeks. Strength returned to her arms. Yet in moments of stillness, memories of the past still visited the thin, malnourished girl who had endured endless cold winds, who had known hunger as a constant companion, who had slept in fear of eviction notices and empty cupboards. The disparity no longer humiliated, it humbled her, reminding her daily of grace received. Vincent Russo stood beside her strong arm, wrapped protectively around her shoulders. His wealth had only grown in the peaceful year. New legitimate ventures in real estate and philanthropy resources poured into children's hospitals and trauma centers across Chicago. Yet power now served quieter purposes. Family barbecues on the beach, private tutors for the children, foundations established in Maria's name to help single mothers and disabled caregivers. Remorse still visited him in the night hours, gnawing at old wounds. But love had become the greater force. Passionate, steady, a fire that warmed rather than consumed. He pressed a kiss to Emily's temple, whispering, "Look at them, look at us." The children called her mom without hesitation now. Luca and Sofia painted pictures for her. Nico and Matteo climbed into her lap for stories. Emily mothered them with a tenderness born of her own losses, baking apple pies that carried both Maria's traditions and her own gentle innovations. Her voice, once always timid, now carried quiet confidence when reading bedtime tales or singing the old lullaby under starlit skies. That evening, as fireworks painted the heavens, Vincent led Emily down a flower-lined path to the water's edge. The children followed at a distance, guided by staff giggling with excitement. He stopped beneath an arch woven with white roses, kneeling before her chair as he had so many times before. In his hand rested a small velvet box. "Emily," he began, voice thick with emotion. "You came into our lives as a promise kept to a dying woman. You stayed through fire and exile and every shadow my world cast. You taught me that love is stronger than guilt, that grace can redeem even the most broken paths." Tears filled her eyes, tears of joy no longer born of fear or poverty's sting. Vincent opened the box to reveal a ring, a simple yet exquisite diamond set in rose gold, surrounded by smaller stones, symbolizing the 4 children. "Will you marry me? Will you let me love and protect you? Not as a rescuer, but as your partner for all our days." Emily's heart tore one final, beautiful time, not with pain, but with overwhelming gratitude. From the depths of desperate, powerless years, cold nights when wind had been her only companion, when sleep deprivation and hunger had been daily torment, to this moment of blazing devotion under summer stars. She nodded, voice soft yet sure. "Yes, Vincent. Yes." The children rushed forward with cheers piling into their embrace. The wedding followed weeks later, intimate, held on the same beach at sunset, attended by close staff and a few trusted friends. Emily wore a flowing gown of ivory silk that whispered against her chair. Vincent stood tall in a tailored suit, eyes never leaving hers. Vows spoken were simple, profound promises of partnership through every season of love that saw beyond past scars, beyond wealth or want, beyond any difference fate might draw. Their life together deepened into rhythms of joy and purpose. Vincent channeled resources into community centers in underserved Chicago neighborhoods, offering job training, medical care, and wheelchair-accessible programs, acts born of remorse transformed into redemption. Emily worked beside him, her lived experience guiding decisions, her gentle strength, inspiring staff and beneficiaries alike. Together they showed the children and the world that love knows no boundary of skin color, that wealth and poverty cannot separate true compassion, that grace arrives sometimes in the form of a stranger keeping an impossible promise. From this story, we gain profound knowledge about resilience in the face of hardship. We learn the vital lesson that promises kept in darkness can bring light to many lives. We receive important education in forgiveness, understanding that remorse can lead to meaningful change. We absorb deep knowledge that love, when genuine, bridges every divide. We take away the timeless lesson that wealth used with compassion multiplies joy. We gain valuable education about the power of second chances. We hold close the knowledge that no past is too broken for redemption. We embrace the lesson that motherhood is born of heart, not circumstance. We deepen our education in empathy across differences. We carry forward the knowledge that grace often wears the face of the suffering. And finally, we learn the eternal lesson and education that true wealth lies in loving without condition. To everyone watching this video, I wish you good health, a joyful life, filled with meaningful connections and daily peace that settles deep in your heart. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share the YouTube channel Alex Truths with your friends and family, so together we can enjoy many more engaging videos every day. Tell me in the comments, how did this story make you feel? Does it connect to moments in your own real life or someone you know? Share your thoughts. I truly want to listen to the emotions from deep within your hearts. Goodbye for now, and I promise to see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.